What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we are checking out the Marshall Silver Jubilee 2555X reissue. Let's do it! But first, I have to say something real quick. Recently, a viewer of mine, Gary, was offended at the way that I played this amp and by my language that I used in my reply to him. So I just have to say, Gary, from the bottom of my heart, suck it! Alright guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle, and what I do is I take awesome high gain amps, guitars, cabs, speakers, pickups, overdrives, I record them with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you guys the unprocessed audio on your end. And sometimes I talk with a really high voice. So if you're into East End or thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes that trigger boomers every single time they make a video about a Marshall amplifier, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, so today is a special day for me. I have been waiting for this day for a long time. I am finally getting to fully demonstrate the Marshall Silver Jubilee 2555X reissue for you guys here on the channel. This has been a highly requested amp pretty much since I started, because you guys know that I am a huge fan of Marshall circuits, of modded Marshall circuits, and that amps like the Splon Quick Rod and the Marshall DSL 50 are some of my favorite amps on the planet. Even with all these crazy modern boutique amps behind me, those are still amps that I gravitate towards for my thrash metal type riffs. And many of you told me that I needed to try a Silver Jubilee if I hadn't already, and boy, were you guys seriously on the right track, because this thing absolutely rips for thrash metal tones. I am having a ball playing this amp, and I just wanted to thank you guys so much for kind of giving me the push I needed to finally start looking for one of these amps. And I really would also like to thank Sweetwater, because Sweetwater is actually sponsoring this video. I recently went out to their facility to film some content with them, and they allowed me to take this beautiful amp home with me in order to make some videos with it for you guys. So massive thank you to Sweetwater for letting me take this with me. But guys, please keep in mind, even though this is a sponsored video by Sweetwater, you're still going to get my honest thoughts and opinions, as you always do. So keep that in mind. So yeah, the Marshall Silver Jubilee. My friend David Zabatos over at Legendary Tones, he is the maker of the Legendary Tones Hot Mod, the Lynch Mod, and pretty soon the Mr. Scary Mod. Those are the little tube devices that you can put into your vintage Marshalls and a bunch of other amps in order to basically add an extra tube gain stage without having to modify the amp. He recently commented on my post where I showed that I had gotten this amp, and he mentioned that at the time that these came out, they were kind of Marshall's answer to a lot of the Jose modded Marshalls that were going around at the time. Because if you know anything about Marshall in the 80s, it was basically all modded super leads and modded JCM 800s that were kind of comprising all of those super saturated gain tones, especially in the early 80s. They were really the only amps that were doing that. And there were a lot of people, Jose Arredondo, I think I'm pronouncing that right, was kind of the main guy who, really was doing a lot of modifications to amplifiers of a lot of the players that we know and love for their Marshall tones these days. And at the time, Marshall, I guess, wanted to get in on that market and create an amplifier that kind of had a little bit more of a relaxed mid, a little bit more of a usable EQ section, and some diode clipping in the gain section in order to give you more gain. At least that's what I understood what David said. He is much smarter and much more knowledgeable on the vintage Marshall stuff than I am, so I'll let him chime in if I'm incorrect, and I'll pin the post on the bottom of this video. But yeah, I didn't previously know that about the Silver Jubilee. I didn't know anything about this amp, which is really funny because I'm a huge amp nerd. I love researching vintage amps and basically what spawned them at the time, what the companies were thinking when they made them. I love old Marshalls. I have a 1978 JMP that's one of my favorite amplifiers, and I've always been into the history of Marshalls, but for some reason I just never really looked at the Silver Jubilee. But now I am, and now it's going to get a whole lot of use, a whole lot of playtime, and I'm gonna make a whole lot of content for you guys because I'm absolutely loving this amplifier every time I plug into it. So with that being said, I'm gonna shut up. I'm already talking too much. We've got the Balaguer Typhon here with the Seymour Duncan distortion in the bridge. I was boosting the amp with the Friedman Buxom boost, which absolutely works wonders in the front end of this amplifier, and I'll tell you why later in the video. We are going into a Mesa traditional cabinet with the stock vintage 30s, SM57 on the V30. Another thing that I learned is that the old Silver Jubilee cabs came with the Marshall vintage speakers in them, which were essentially the first iteration of the vintage 30 as we know it today. I thought that was pretty cool because most Marshalls don't seem to work very well with vintage 30s. Well, I can tell you that this amp sounds incredible through these Mesa vintage 30s. But yeah, we're gonna do like we always do. I'm going to go ahead, I'm gonna roll the EQ, the presence, everything back to noon. I'm gonna turn that gain down to about 9 o'clock. There is a lead and a rhythm channel on this, so I'm gonna try and mess around with both channels a little bit. Well, the boost is already off, so again, let's hear how this thing sounds without being boosted or pushed by anything, with generally everything at noon and the gain at 9 o'clock on the lead setting. All right guys, so off the bat, that high end is really kind of thin and tinny in my personal opinion. I wanna kind of dial that back a little bit. I wanna dial this presence up to compensate. That is pretty gainy for an 80s Marshall with the gain at 9 o'clock, I have to say. All right, I'm not gonna spend too much time in this gain range because there's already a million videos with this amp in that range. I want to honor my thrash and hardcore roots, and I wanna immediately push that gain up. If you guys aren't into thrash and hardcore riffs, I would go ahead and click off this video now because it's not gonna be for you, Gary. All right, so we're starting to get pretty saturated. Before I get too ahead of myself, I really do want to pull this out. This says rhythm clip, so I'm assuming that that lowers the gain a little bit. Okay, so actually the rhythm clip seems to brighten it up a little bit. It kind of brings in a little bit more highs. I actually like it with the rhythm clip pulled out. I think that sounds a little bit more my speed. After all, I am a rhythm player. So, all right, so pulling out the output master. All right, putting it back in. All right, that's cool. We want to stay on the high gain setting though. So I'm actually gonna pull the lead master back. Let's push that output master up. Holy God. All right, let's pull it back a little bit. All right, so it sounds awesome as is, but of course we gotta push that gain up. Let's go ahead and push it up to just below 3 o'clock. All right, what happens when we push it back in? A lot more lows and low mids for sure. Pulling the rhythm out definitely removes some of those bass frequencies, but I like the way that it feels on the palm mutes a little bit better. Let's actually push the bass EQ up. All right, so it's a little bulbous at the moment. If you don't know what bulbous means, go ahead and look it up. We're gonna pull it back a little bit. I'm gonna add a little bit more mids. The EQ controls on this amp actually work, guys. So changing the EQ just a little bit is going to have a big difference depending on where you are in the dial. Most vintage Marshalls, or most Marshalls in general, the EQ doesn't really make that big of a difference when you adjust it. That's kind of why all the vintage guys put it all at 10 and just turned it up. Here, you're not gonna wanna do that. You're gonna actually wanna try to dial the amp in a little bit. All right, so now we've got some of that barky Marshall mid-range. Let's get a little bit more presence on it. Okay, let's go ahead and push that gain up even more. Much like pretty much every other Marshall in existence, when you start to push that gain to get some saturation, it significantly fattens up the amp, adds a lot of compression, rounds off the highs. So if you want, well, hold on, let's push this in. So we got the Friedman Buxom boost here. Just listen to how this thing sounds real quick and I'll tell you why I love it on this amp. All right, so why does this boost work so well on this amp? Well, because the boost on this pedal has a lot of output, but you can also tailor the low end with the tight knob to make sure that that output is tighter, and it also doesn't boost the mid-range unless you want it to. You can keep it flat. So that accents something like a Marshall really well because it doesn't take out too many of the lows, which the Marshalls don't already are kind of lacking lows, and it doesn't boost the mid-range, which the Marshall already has a whole lot of mid. So it works really well to kick this amp into a much higher gain territory. Let's go ahead and pull that bass up though, because we definitely need some low end punch. That sounds ridiculous. That's pretty modern sounding, actually. Let's pull the bass back just a tad. I don't even know what I'm playing. I'm just having a good time. That sounds ridiculous. I would like a little bit more of a rounder mid. Let's push that mid up just a tad. Woo! Okay, now we've got a lot of mids. Again, like I said, a little bit goes a long way on this amp. The benefit of having a boost out front that has a lot of output is you can roll the gain back on the amp, still remain saturated, and the amp is a little bit more open. It's not getting clouded from pushing the gain stages on the amp so hard. Yeah, all right. I'm out of words. Just to demonstrate what I'm talking about though, let's go over to the classic SD1. All right, so we are on the SD1 in the stock setting. Here's the difference in output between these two pedals. So as you can tell, SD1, a lot less output, which means we're going to have to boost the gain on the amp significantly to get the same level of saturation. And you can hear that the low mids on the amp start to get a little bit boxy. It starts to get a little bit congested once you push that gain up to get it more saturated. And and we're getting a little bit of that low mid woof that comes along with having that gain pushed up. So another thing we can do, let's pull the gain back a little bit on the amp. Let's add a little bit of drive from the pedal itself. Still sounds awesome though. I am having a really good time. If you guys can't tell, let's try one more overdrive. Let's try the Piper Drive from Westminster Effects is kind of like a modified OCD. Let's hear how that sounds. All right, so that has a lot of output. We can pull the gain back on the amp a little bit, and it also has a lot of top end aggression. Let's roll that tone back. I'm having so much fun right now. Thank you so much, Sweetwater, for letting me take this home. This amp sounds super good. That drive in front of this amp sounds super good. I'm actually gonna roll back the presence just a tad. Let's roll that mid up just a tad. It's on the verge of being great, but let's pull that mid back just a tad and pull those lows back a little bit. It just gets too boxy in the low mids when you dial it like that. Where we have it right now, I could die with this tone. This sounds incredible. Yeah, man, I'm so happy right now. This thing sounds so good. I slept on this amp for far, far too long. Let's try it in a lower tuning and see how it handles that. All right, D standard. Already liking that. This drive does not take any low end out though. Let's try the Boss M77. MXR, not Boss. Okay, now we are slightly congested. Let's get a little more highs. All right, so that sounds good, but I still think that we need something with a whole lot of output, and let's dial this gain back to retain that clarity, especially when we're tuning lower. I would definitely want to throw something like a parametric EQ in the loop of this amp just to kind of boost some of those more modern lower frequencies that the Marshalls typically don't have. And really, that's all I really want to do to this thing, man. I am loving the way that this sounds, for real. All right, guys, so I have my Epiphone Matt Heafy Origins guitar here with the Matt Heafy signature Fishman Fluence pickups. Let's go ahead and turn this amp on. Let's hear how it reacts to modern active pickups. I am falling apart here. Let's actually try pulling this out or pushing this back in on the input gain. This is now the lead setting. It should sound a little fatter and darker. All right, so yeah, it is a little fuller now, a little bit more rounded on top. Let's see how it sounds. Let's try it with EMGs real quick, just as an ode to 80s thrash tones, and then we're gonna call it a day here. All right, guys, so I'm gonna pull those mids back. We're gonna kind of go for a scoopy 80s tone. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for me today on the Marshall Silver Jubilee 2555X reissue. What did you guys think about this amp? Did you love it as much as I did? I am having a blast playing through this thing. I would like to kind of play around with cabinets a little bit more and see if I can find something that really suits this thing as it is right now, even through the Mesa V30s. I think it sounds incredible, having a lot of fun. Throw an EQ in the loop and maybe find a slightly different cab that really matches up with it perfectly. And this could be my new Bushido code rig, no lie. Like, I am loving what I'm getting out of this amp. Thank you again to Sweetwater. Seriously can't say how happy I am to be working with a company as awesome as Sweetwater to bring you guys content. Down in the description, I'm gonna put an affiliate link, as I always do, for Sweetwater. And if you guys click that link, anything you buy over the next couple of weeks from Sweetwater, I will get an affiliate commission. I would greatly appreciate it. It really helps the channel move forward, and it shows Sweetwater that you guys are actually watching my videos and gives them the impression that I am not a total nobody, even though I am. Thanks so much for watching, guys. It has been my pleasure. If you are not subscribed and you liked the video, please hit that subscribe button on the way out if you liked what you saw. Again, 20,000 by the end of the year. That would be huge for me. Really appreciate you guys being here. Kyle here again. We're gonna say here a few more times. I don't know what's going on. I'm falling apart. Have a great day. Bye. See you next time. That's what I usually say.
You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.